Every once in a while, the Sonic series gives us something so unique, so experimental, and so unapologetically strange that it becomes unforgettable. And today, we're talking about one of those games. Back in my last review, we explored the world of Sonic Boom, a show full of charm, personality, and creative risks. And now, we're jumping into a game that embodies the same spirit of bold experimentation. A game where Sonic doesn't drive a car because he is the car. That's right. Today we're reviewing Sonic R, the Sonic racing game that dared to ask, what if we made a racing game but forgot to include the brakes? Sonic R is one of those titles that people either remember fondly, remember ironically, or remember because of that soundtrack. And yes, we'll talk about the music, briefly, because honestly, the soundtrack deserves its own episode. But before we dive into the review, let's take a quick look at how Sonic R came to be, the history, the ambition, the quirks, and the legacy of one of the most delightful odd entities in the Sonic franchise. I'm the optimistic Sonic fan, and today we're hitting the track. I like Sonic R. Before we jump into the review, let's talk about where Sonic R came from, because its development story is just as fascinating as the game itself. Sonic R was released in 1997 for the Sega Saturn, developed through a collaboration between Traveler's Tales and Sonic Team. It was actually the only original Sonic game created specifically for the Saturn. Sonic 3D Blast was a port, and Sonic Jam was a compilation. Development began right after Sonic 3D Blast wrapped in 1996, and the whole project took only 9 months. Traveler's Tales handled the programming and engineering work, while Sonic Team designed the tracks on paper and guided the overall direction. Here's the wild part. Sonic R originally began as a Formula 1 racing game for Sega. No Sonic, no Emeralds, no Tails doll, just a straight racing title. But when the troubled Sonic Extreme project was cancelled, Sega pivoted and asked Traveler's Tales to transform their in-progress engine into a Sonic racing game in time for the 1997 holiday season. That's how Sonic R was born. Sonic R became the first 3D Sonic racing game, letting players race on foot, or hovercraft, or flying across 5 colorful tracks while collecting Chaos Emeralds and unlocking secret characters. It emphasized exploration, shortcuts, and platforming, a very different approach from kart races of the time. The soundtrack, composed by Richard Jacques, became one of the most iconic and polarizing parts of the game. It was the first Sonic game with a fully vocal soundtrack, but we'll save the deep dive for its own episode because it deserves that spotlight. Reviews at the time were mixed. Praise for visuals and track design, criticized for controls and short length. But over time, Sonic R developed a cult following, enough that Sega revisited the racing genre later with games like Sonic Riders. Alright, we've talked about the history. We've talked about the ambition. Now let's talk about the game itself. The charm, the quirks, the creativity, and everything that makes Sonic R one of the most fascinating entries in the Sonic franchise. Sonic R is a racing game that feels like it could only exist in the Sonic universe. It's not a kart racer. It's not a traditional foot race. It's something in between. A hybrid of platforming, exploration, and speed that tries to answer a question fans have been asking since the Genesis days. If Sonic is the fastest thing alive, why would he even need a car? Sonic's R's answer is simple. He doesn't. Sonic runs, Tails flies, Knuckles glides, Amy drives a car because she's Amy. And that's the magic of Sonic R. It embraces the character's abilities and builds a racing game around them instead of forcing them into the same mold. It's weird, it's bold, and it's exactly the kind of creative risk that defined Sega in the 90s. The moment you start the first race, you can feel that this isn't a game trying to compete with Mario Kart. It's trying to be something else entirely. A Sonic platformer designed as a racing game. And honestly, that's what makes it so memorable. Let's talk about the tracks, because even though Sonic R only has 5, each one is packed with personality, shortcuts, secrets, and that unmistakable Sega Saturn charm. Resort Island, the perfect introduction. Bright, colorful, and inviting. Resort Island is the kind of track that immediately tells you what Sonic R is all about. Wide paths, branching routes, loops, springs, and a soundtrack that particularly begs you to smile. It's the ideal first impression. It's also where you learn the game's core philosophy. Exploration is just as important as speed. If you just run forward, you'll finish the race. If you explore, you'll find tokens, Chaos Emeralds, and shortcuts that change everything. Radical City, the Sega Saturn aesthetic at its peak. Neon lights, sharp angles, a cityscape that feels like a cousin to the world of Nights into Dreams. Radical City is where Sonic R's visuals really shine. The track design is clever, long straightaways for Sonic, high routes for Tails, and glide-friendly shortcuts for Knuckles. It's a playground disguised as a racetrack. Regal Ruin, the most Sonic Team track in the game. Ancient ruins, sand, stone, and a layout that feels like it belongs in a 3D Sonic platform. Regal Ruin is where the game leans hardest into exploration. There are so many branching paths that your first race will feel like you only saw 30% of the track. And that's intentional. Sonic R wants you to replay, to experiment, to discover. Reactive Factory, the most chaotic track. This one is pure 90s Sega energy. The conveyor belts, machinery, flashing lights, and a layout that feels like a puzzle. It's the track where mastery matters most. If you don't know the shortcuts, you'll fall behind fast. But once you do know them, it's one of the most satisfying tracks in the game. Radiant Emerald, the grand finale. A rainbow-colored dreamscape floating in space. It's the shortest track, but also the most visually striking. It feels like a reward, a victory lap for players who collected all the Chaos Emeralds. It's also the only track where the music is instrumental, which gives it a unique vibe compared to the rest of the game. This is where Sonic R truly shines. Most racing games reward staying on the track. Sonic R rewards leaving it. Every track is filled with hidden doors, alternative routes, springs, loops, secret tunnels, high-risk shortcuts, Chaos Emeralds, character tokens. It's a racing game where the fastest path isn't always the obvious one. Sometimes the best strategy is to slow down, take a detour, grab a token, and unlock a new character. And that's brilliant! It turns every race into a mini adventure. It gives the game replay value. It makes each track feel alive. Sonic R isn't about winning the race. It's about mastering the world. Sonic R has one of the most charming unlock systems in any Sonic game. Character tokens, rival races, new characters. Each track has 5 tokens. Collect them, finish in the top 3, and you unlock a rival race. Beat the rival, and they join your roster. It's simple, but incredibly satisfying. Chaos Emeralds equals Supersonic. Collect all 7 Chaos Emeralds across the tracks, and you unlock Supersonic, the ultimate reward. He's fast, he floats, he breaks the game in the best way possible. The characters themselves: Metal Sonic, fast and stylish; Tails Doll, creepy, iconic, and surprisingly fun; Metal Knuckles, a fan favorite; Egg Robo, a great final unlock. Each one feels distinct, and unlocking them feels like a genuine achievement. Before we move on, we need to talk about one of the most unexpected legacies that ever come out of Sonic Art: the Tails Doll. Sonic Art marks the first appearance of the Tails Doll, a strange, hovering, expressionless replica of Tails with button eyes, stiff limbs, and a red gem floating above its head. In the context of the game, it's just another unlockable racer. It doesn't speak, it doesn't emote, it doesn't even animate much. It simply floats behind the player like a silent puppet. And yet, this tiny, low-poly character will go on to become one of the most famous pieces of Sonic creepypasta ever created. How a simple model became a horror icon? The Tails Doll's unsettling design, the blank stare, the stiff movements, the uncanny hovering sparked the imagination of fans in the early 2000s. As the internet's creepypasta culture grew, the Tails Doll became a recurrent feature in fan-made horror stories, urban legends, and cursed game myths. People wrote tales about it. The Tails Doll stalking players, haunted copies of Sonic Art, the infamous "Can You Feel the Sunshine" curse, rituals involving mirrors and the doll appearing in dreams or glitches. It becomes Sonic's version of Slender Man, a character never intended to be scary, but whose design was just strange enough to inspire an entire subgenre of fan horror. What's fascinating is that the Tails Doll never reappeared in a major Sonic game after Sonic Art, but its influence lived on in fan animations, horror mods, ARG-style videos, creepypasta recordings, Halloween artwork, even references in Sonic fan games. It's rare for a one-off unlockable character to leave such a massive cultural footprint, but the Tails Doll did exactly that. It became a symbol of Sonic's weird, experimental era, a reminder that even the strangest corners of the franchise can inspire creativity for decades. Only Sonic Art could accidentally create a horror icon, and honestly, I love that. Sonic Art is a time capsule of 90s 3D design. Yes, the polygons are sharp. Yes, the textures are simple. Yes, the drawing distance is short. But the style, the color, the energy, it's pure Sega magic. The game looks like a playable music video. Bright, bold, and unapologetically stylized. It's the kind of aesthetic that ages better than realism because it was never trying to be realistic in the first place. Sonic R looks like a dream. A weird dream, but a dream nonetheless. Alright, the soundtrack. Here's the short version. It's iconic. It's catchy. It's the first Sonic game with full vocals. It's a huge part of the game's identity. It's impossible to forget once you heard it. We'll save the deep dive for another day. Sonic R works because it embraces what makes Sonic special. Speed, exploration, personality, creativity, charm, experimentation. It's not trying to be Mario Kart. It's not trying to be realistic. It's not trying to be safe. It's trying to be Sonic. And that's why it has endured. Sonic R is a game that knows exactly what it wants to be. A colorful, quirky, experimental racing platform hybrid that celebrates the Sonic universe in a way no other game does. It's flawed, it's weird, it's wonderful, and it's unforgettable. Sonic R is the kind of game that rewards players who look for the good, the creativity, the ambition, the charm, the personality. It's a game that's easy to dismiss if you only look at the surface, but incredibly rewarding if you appreciate what it's trying to do. It's a game that takes risks, a game that experiments, a game that embraces fun over perfection. And that's exactly the kind of Sonic content you love celebrating. Sonic R is a game that stands out because it dares to be different. It's a game that captures the spirit of the 90s. Bold, creative, and unafraid to try something new. It's not perfect, it's not polished, but it's full of heart. And sometimes, that's what matters most. Hey, who turned out the lights? Alright, you know the drill. I may be the optimistic Sonic fan, but even I can't like everything. And Sonic R, for all of its charm, definitely has a few bumps in the road. One of the biggest criticisms players have is the controls. Sonic R is famous, or infamous, for feeling slippery, stiff, and sometimes unresponsive. Characters don't turn the way you expect, the drift can feel awkward, and their Saturn's D-pad wasn't exactly built for precise 3D movements. It's playable, but it takes patience. The camera, well, it tries. But sometimes it swings too wide, clips into walls, or lags behind just enough to make the tight turns harder than they need to be. It's part of the game's charm now, but back then, it's frustrated a lot of players. Even though the tracks are packed with secrets, Sonic R only has 5 of them. For a racing game, that's a tiny amount of content. The replay value is there, but the initial offering is undeniably small. The music is iconic, but also polarizing. Some players adore the upbeat vocals, while others find them cheesy or out of place. It's one of those you either get it or you don't situations. And again, we'll save the full soundtrack deep on its own episode. The Sega Saturn didn't have analog controls by default, and Sonic R really needed them. Trying to navigate 3D space with a D-pad made the learning curve steep and the controls feel even more awkward. Combine that with the level design's sharp turns and narrow paths, and you got a recipe for frustration. So yeah, Sonic R isn't perfect. The controls are slippery, the camera can be stubborn, the content is limited, and the Saturn's hardware didn't do any favors. But hey, that's why this segment exists. You can't like everything. And even with its flaws, Sonic R still has a charm that keeps people talking about it decades later. There, I said it. Now leave me alone. Sonic R is one of those games that reminds me why I love being the optimistic Sonic fan. It's weird, it's experimental, it's flawed, and it's full of heart. It's a game that dared to be different at a time when Sega was throwing every creative idea at the wall just to see what would stick. And honestly, I'm glad this one stuck. Whether it's the bright, colorful tracks, the bold decision to make a foot racing game, the unlockable characters, or the soundtrack that became a cultural phenomenon, Sonic R carved out a legacy that's still talked about today. And that's something special. Not every game needs to be perfect to be memorable. Sometimes it just needs personality. And Sonic R had that in spades. And that's what I love about revisiting games like this. They remind us that the Sonic franchise isn't just one thing. It's a collection of risks, experiments, surprises, and moments that shape the series in ways we never expected. Even a small quirky Saturn racer can leave a mark on the fandom, inspire memes, spark creepypastas, and become a nostalgic favorite for an entire generation. So whether you grew up with Sonic R, discovered it later, or only know it through the music and the Tailstorm memes, it's a game worth celebrating. It's a reminder of how creative, bold, and wonderfully strange Sonic's history can be. I'm the optimistic Sonic fan, and I'll see you next time.